It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. We begin our NFL draft prospect coverage leading up to the April 25th first round start here in Detroit, Michigan. In this episode, we'll look at the running back position. How does this class compare to some recent drafts? And will we see a running back taken in round one? We'll give our thoughts and break down the top prospects next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzinski Drew, and I am joined by Coach Andy Scheel of the Marine City Mariners, and we are talking NFL draft prospects for the 2024 draft. It's only a couple months away, and it's here in Detroit, Michigan. That's what we're really, really excited about, and we're also excited that the Lions aren't picking in the top three. Lions are picking at number 29 because they had a hell of a season last year, and that's why we're a little delayed in our coverage because we were a little busy reviewing some playoff games. So we were happy to do that. But first, Coach Scheel, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining. And I know this bears the fruit of your ideas for this podcast. This is where it all started with our draft coverage, and we're going into year 7 here coming up. But thoughts on that, Coach?
Yeah, it's wild how it's progressed into something. It keeps getting a little bit more fun every year. So, and that's kudos to you and all that you do to make all this stuff happen. It's great to be able to do this with you. And it's kind of the nerve center of what we do has been draft coverage, really, of multiple drafts. Not, we done little kind of small ones for the NHL. I think we've done the NBA before, but this has kind of been the I guess the synergy of the Sports Peninsula podcast has always been the NFL draft. So fun to do it with you again, man.
Yeah. Looking forward to this. And we're starting with the running back position this year. And, it's obviously over time, over the last 20 years, when we were kids, everyone had a bell cow running back. And that's very much changed. It's rare to have one. But when you can find one in the draft, and there's usually one or two, they get a lot of attention, obviously, but the shelf life's not that long anymore, Coach. And we talked about that off the air last night. The physicality and the speed of the game really has shortened a lot of careers in terms of the position groups, and running back's no exception. I mean, now you think about last year when Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs drafted here in Detroit in the top 15. Oh, a lot of eyebrows got raised. There was and Brad Holmes pointed that out eloquently in his postseason media availability session. There were a lot of doubters out there, but why is that in your mind, Coach?
Well, I think so many people listen to so much of the information that's out on the internet, and that can be expanded upon outside of sports into weather, into news. I mean, there's so much information coming out there. Not all of it is 100%. I mean, 100% genuine, and sometimes it's clickbait stuff that might actually alter from 100% the truth. That's infiltrated sports. I mean, as much as any entity of social media or digital media or internet content. So when you have so many different people talking, I think what they do, Drew, is they kind of take this narrative that the running back's becoming an endangered species in the NFL and expand upon that. And that becomes like a Kool-Aid for people to drink. And, that we're drafting this running back, at this spot, is ludicrous when, all these other, computer module based mock drafts have them going in the 30s or 40s. I think there's a little bit of guilt there. And, hey, kudos for Brad Holmes to pointing that out. Something we work very hard to not do here. So, for better or for worse, I know there's many better, but, I kudos for him for doing that, because he's been brilliant.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. And, of course. Yeah, hell, we might be wrong on all this. I don't know. But I mean, it's honest assessments. It's honest assessments. It's not any BS clickbait like you're saying, Coach. And that's not what we're about. And we never will be. And maybe that's why the subscriber list will be low. And you know what? That's cool. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But yeah, it's just honest. It's honest assessments from us. I mean, we watched the game. We studied the game. I mean, most of you played the game at the high school level, and certainly you've coached for years, so you know the game a little bit. So I mean, We're just trying to educate some folks here, and not just in the Detroit area, but just for the position groups in general. We look at that, and we'll do our first round mock right before the draft happens for the entire first round, and we look forward to that as well. So, let's jump into this running back class, Coach. And it is last year there was a lot of buzz with Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then when they got drafted that high, I don't think they disappointed the Atlanta Falcons or the Detroit Lions at all. But this year, it's a little bit different, and this class probably not quite as deep as maybe last year's was. But Coach, we got a lot of names up here. Let's talk about a few of them. Who kind of leaps out at you right away before we jump into the top 6?
Yeah, we've got a lot of nice players. And much to what you've just said, Drew, not sure how many RB1s there are in this draft, at least maybe for the 2024 season. I see one that could be, and we'll talk about him later, but getting outside of the top 6, which we're going to feature here, soon, and a few more of these guys too as dark horses. But I mean, you've got guys like Braylon Allen, who, in my estimation, could be that guy. Where he slots in the draft, I'm not sure. I see a guy that could be the first running back taken. Many people think that's going to be Jonathan Brooks. I can understandably see that. Blake Corum, we know very, very well here in the state of Michigan. And he's a Wolverine legend, for good. And he's a very highly accomplished college running back. Audric Estime, another guy, if you watch a lot of Notre Dame football, you certainly know who this guy's name is. And rounding out, with guys like Trey Benson and Bucky Irving, highly talented players, Ray Davis, Will Shipley, Marshawn Lloyd. These are players that we saw play football. So, Clemson and USC games are on a lot. You saw a lot of those guys. There's Dylan Lawbey, and we'll talk about him. If you're a CMU Chippewa fan, you might know who he is because he came up into Mount Pleasant, last August of 2023 and ran around like he was Red Grange. And if you want to see it, go YouTube it, because he was certainly a scintillating player that day. Frank Gore Jr., there's a name that a lot of people are going to know, and they should know, because that is, Frank Gore, the recently retired NFL legend's son. Kamani Vidal is somebody that you'll be talking about, Drew. I know you think, what you saw a lot, and he's considered maybe the best blocker in the whole draft. Some great stories by like Cody Schrader, blue chippers like, Jace McClellan and Jalen Wright, high-level prospects, and guys that really have proven themselves out and are going to have opportunities in NFL camps. And certainly you will see in the preseason, and maybe more, guys like Rasheen Ali from Marshall, Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State, Mayan Williams from Ohio State, Michael Wiley from Arizona, and then the second running back from Tennessee that really is going to get an opportunity to play in the NFL is Jabari Small from Tennessee. So, it's a good group still. It's a good group still. And we're really excited to see where some of these guys fall. As far as the Lions looking into this, it all depends kind of, who you're listening to. We are pretty good. We've got a lot of our running backs under contract for next year. I think we have 4 that we could roll with, and that's not including Jason Kabinda. So, what would we be adding to the undrafted free agent market or late day 3 into some improvements or some competitions? Absolutely. Are we looking at some of these guys in the first 2 rows of the slide? I'm not so sure that they're going to land in Detroit, but it's going to be fun to talk about them because there are some talent here and some guys that are certainly going to carry the football and receive the football at the NFL level.
Yeah, no, great synopsis, Coach. And yeah, I would agree with you. The Lions, this is not a position of need. And if you really think about it, and I'm not going to get too deep into the capology part of this, but when you look at the way the Lions are structured, there's some key players that are going to get paid big money because you want to build, that's your core. And I think that this position group, when you look at even last season, the 2022 season, it was DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, and that was an outstanding backfield with Craig Reynolds. And this year it was David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Craig Reynolds. So they completely overhauled it through free agency and the draft. They didn't break the bank in free agency, but they had a hell of a productive season from everyone involved in that backfield. And I think that's probably the way this rolls. So, yeah, I see if they add a running back in Detroit, it's likely day 3 or UDFA. But you never know. I mean, someone might jump up and, fall in the right spot, and Holmes, Campbell, and Spielman and company like them, and that's what they're going to do. Who am I to question that? I've one thing I've learned over the last couple of years. I don't question Brad Holmes too much at the draft table. He knows what he's doing. Well, let's talk about.
Which is it's a change over the last 25 or so years. But you're absolutely right. When he gets somebody on day 3 in that UDFA market, certainly worth a look, because they could stick.
Absolutely. You brought up Braylon Allen, and he's rated in the top 6 on most everyone's draft boards, Coach. And certainly we ran with that initially, but man, when you look at the body of work, when you look at his size and speed, Braylon Allen, I find it hard to believe that he won't be the number 1 prospect here, and that's where you've got him. Let's talk about Braylon Allen, Coach.
Well, yeah, and getting back to that, if you across many of the draft prospect ranking platforms, Braylon Allen ranks, as you said, somewhere between 6 and 10, but there are many ones of some esteem that of history with working with the NFL draft. He's in the top 5. And several at 3 and 4, and CBS Sportsline has him as their number 1 running back prospect.
Oh, there we go.
And really, from what I saw on film, is is a runner that's not dissimilar in size, stature, or speed and style to Derrick Henry. Braylon Allen's, comes from running back U, so to speak. Wisconsin has churned out a lot of outstanding running backs. 6'2", 245-pound COVID junior, we'll say, in regards to his eligibility. But he was a 4-star prospect coming out of the state of Wisconsin up in Fond du Lac. He was an All Big Ten selection last year. He was the Guaranteed Rate Bowl MVP. He has 2,500 career rushing yards with 23 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons. Those are just in his first 2 seasons at Wisconsin. So he was well on his way to being one of these Badger legends at running back. Still wound up with 3,482 career rushing yards and 35 touchdowns, nearly 6 yards per carry for a career. That's very Wisconsin-like too. That's just what they do. But I tell you what, he checks all those boxes in regards to what a Wisconsin running back is and has been for that program. And a lot of those guys, Drew, have been really, really good NFL football players.
Yeah, and before you go into his strengths and weaknesses, another name that comes to mind, similar stature, Ron Dane too, who came out of Wisconsin. But yeah, I thought Derrick Henry right away too. And I get the feeling that after the combine and pro day, Braylon Allen's stock's going to rise up dramatically, because you're going to see the physicality and speed with in the flesh, so to speak, right up front and personal. And that always opens scouts' eyes, I'm sure. But talk about his strengths.
Yeah. So, you thinking, Ron Dane, a guy like Brandon Jacobs would come to mind. These kinds of finisher style running backs, big, physical, square shoulder guys. The one thing Braylon Allen does bring that maybe a couple of those guys that we had just mentioned, maybe not so much, is he does have some breakaway speed. He can run a little bit. He really, and the other thing that's very impressive is he showcases a lot of ability as a receiver. He can actually run a route and get turned back around to the quarterback. So it's like having another like tight end style receiver on the field coming from a different angle. He's a just a workout warrior. He's, phenomenal weight room and testing numbers, which brings us back to the combine. Yes, Drew, if Braylon Allen is a full participant, I would in the combine, I would certainly think that's going to aid his prospect ranking quite a bit as well. Violent physical runner. He is going to square shoulders and come at you and over the top of you, whatever, it's going to take for him to gain yards. He's a yards warrior. He is going to get, and he will get that extra yard. This is a guy that's going to have great value on 3rd and short, 4th and short, and carrying the football. In near towards the goal line where it starts to become more difficult to punch it through. He is a finisher, and that's something that goes without saying. Everybody can use a finisher. Everybody can use a finisher.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Coach. I mean, we saw a good amount of him, obviously, here up here in Big Ten country, Michigan State, etc. But yeah, I mean, we're used to Wisconsin producing running backs like this and having a great running game. But yeah, he really stands out. And why do you? Before we get into some of the buyer beware stuff here, why do you think Braylon Allen didn't get the attention that maybe other backs at his skill level would have gotten in the past? I'm not sure I understand it, but what are your thoughts?
Well, it's almost like Braylon Allen's a little bit more fitted for the pro game than he is the college game because with the air raid and speed and space offenses that we see at the college level, they're looking for a different running back prototype and profile than maybe what Braylon Allen offers. Braylon Allen is a Wisconsin, Michigan. Now look at Michigan State with Coach Jonathan Smith bringing what he's going to the table. Notre Dame style running attack. So there's just fewer programs that kind of elicit the pro style run game as we know it, like those programs are doing it. So that has something to do with it too. And I tell you what, man, Braylon Allen is a big old Ford LTD. And, he's going to be running on some rocky road and getting banged into quite a bit. And those miles are going to get hard real quick when you're that big. So there's just, I think, some concern and investment in regards to the kind of capital that you want to spend on a guy that could very well only be a 4 or 5, 6 year player in the NFL. Could be a 4 or 5, 6 year. And so I think maybe that's what we're seeing a little bit with Braylon Allen. That he's not the running back of the day. He's a little bit more of a throwback style. But so is Derrick Henry, and he kind of got walked back on a little bit too in the draft. And I would say, he's gonna have a gold blazer in his future.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Great comparison, Coach. Let's talk about what Braylon Allen needs to work on to be successful in the NFL here. What are you seeing?
Well, just by looking at his body, and this would wear down if it was an asset, but he's not a long speed home run threat. He's not going to be that. Although there are clips of him doing so, that is not his forte. If he rips off a 75-yard touchdown, there is definitely a breakdown in the defense because he doesn't just possess that ability to get an angle and run away from you. He's a much better pass catcher than a pass blocker. But looking at the glass half full there, well, he does one of them well. And if you don't do both well, you better do one of them well. And he does. So for being the type of build he is, he's not a great pass pro guy. He doesn't pick up blitzes that well. He's, struggles in squaring up and taking on a rusher in the pass game. So that's something that definitely needs to work on. He's not very elusive. And you know what? At 6'2", 245, are we going to expect him to be a Barry Sanders, lightning in a bottle type player? No, that's not his build. But he's not very elusive. But that's going to lead us to the next two, the things that we should talk about. If he's not very elusive, he's going to be a big target for hits because he's a big target. And those hits are going to come square at times. And that willingness to take on that kind of physicality, Drew, is going to take its toll. So that is the concern. Will Braylon Allen be able to hold up over the I guess, duration of an NFL season, let alone a 4 or 5, 6 year stretch where you would be taking this player in day one and looking to and put that upon him? That's where some questions still lie. That's where I think some people have him a little bit further down their draft boards. But for the Sports Peninsula podcast, we are going to fall in line. We feel that this is the best and most readily available NFL product at running back in the 2024 draft.
Yeah, I would concur, and it is going against the grain a bit. Although, like you pointed out, CBS does have him as their number one now, and like I said, I think that'll change as time goes by, as
I think the combine is going to be really, really kind to him.
Yeah, exactly. And when I look at his weaknesses, and I agree with everything you said, but as a team drafting him, I'm going to sign him to a 4-year deal with a 5th-year option, right? So I'm going to get what I think is the best of Braylon Allen. Now, what his concern personally is, can he hold up to get that second contract? And of course, we hear about, like, even Saquon Barkley struggling with getting what he feels he deserves for that second deal. But again, there's injuries there too, with his knees. So in this situation, if Braylon Allen can hold up as well as like a Derrick Henry has, or like a Nick. I know Nick Chubb hurt his knee this year, but overall Nick Chubb's held up pretty well. There's big backs, Najee Harris, another one from Pittsburgh. So there's big backs that are holding up in this league and playing well at a pretty high level. So that's how I see him. It'd be awesome if he can get to the Derrick Henry level. At the very least, I see him being a very productive back in the vein of a Najee Harris or a Nick Chubb type player. And yeah, I like him a lot. Number one on the board without question. Coach, what do you think his chances are of going day one before we jump to the next prospect?
Like I said, I don't think I don't see it. I see it being early day two. Is where I see it. I think I see some receivers being maybe a little bit more plentifully taken, if plentifully is a word, this year than running backs as far as offensive skilled players. I think there's going to be runs on offensive linemen. There's going to be runs on defensive backs. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks taken in the first round this year, once again. So I am not so sure. We're going to highlight a guy next that could very well be that first running back that comes off the board that could sneak into the first round category, because he does possess some Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs-like qualities. But I am seeing late day one into day two, earlier day two. So that's where he will be taken. If he's not picked up by a upper echelon team on day one, he will certainly be part of somebody's running back stable that's going to be more in the early parts of the draft, but on day two.
Yeah, and that prospect is Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. And Coach, yeah, he's got a lot of talent, no question about that. And obviously played behind some good players, and then got his opportunity this past season and made the most of it. Talk about Jonathan Brooks.
Certainly, Drew. And lots of people, he's at the top of the board, and his talent and skills speak for that, because that's what has earned him those rankings. Jonathan Brooks is the latest running back out of the University of Texas, 6 foot, 207-pound redshirt sophomore. He's from the state of Texas. He was a football and basketball standout in high school at Hallettsville High School. The reason why we kind of adjusted things, because Jonathan Brooks for a while in our process was the number one running back on our board as well. Mm-hmm. But really, this is his first really year of production at the major high-level college level. Now, certainly it was a banner year for the University of Texas. They went to the college football playoff. They were an outstanding team led by Coach Sarkisian. I'm happy for him and the resurgence of the Longhorn program. And, Jonathan Brooks was a big part of that. 1,135 yards and 10 touchdowns, 25 receptions this year. He was a 4-star high school product. Jonathan doesn't have a lot of miles on him, which are a plus, but it also is, there's not as much proven work out there at the, as a ball carrier, because he was behind Bijan Robinson and Rashawn Johnson as well. So he was behind both of those players at the University of Texas. But while he was behind those players, he was outstanding on special teams. Very willing tackler on like the kickoff team. And I believe so I mean, really, really high quality football player in Jonathan Brooks. And very well the guy that could go first at the running back position.
Yeah, absolutely. We like Allen a lot, but yeah, we like Brooks too. And it is possible. Absolutely. I see what you're saying, Coach. And I'm not comparing the two, but we know of a running back who played behind another guy at Oklahoma State and Thurman Thomas and didn't see a lot of carries till his junior year. And then he had a pretty good season. His name was Sanders. So it happens. I'm not comparing Barry Sanders to Jonathan Brooks. I'm not, but I am saying that can happen too. It's not a knock on Brooks like you're saying. It definitely isn't, but he got his opportunity now. But there is a little bit of mystery. Can he sustain this? What was this a product of the system, or is he really that good? I suppose we'll find out a lot during his pro day specifically, and possibly during the combine if he participates fully. But let's talk about what you like about Jonathan Brooks, Coach.
Will you pique the ears of one dog namesake of Barry Sanders, who had made an appearance in the room here to look out his window? When you said those names, those ears peaked up, and then he turned around and left. So, man, you good job, Drew. You cued him to take a hike because he was going to start barking at some dog across the street. But
well, this is his position group, so he's fired up.
That's right. So he's going to be coming in and out of here a little bit, I have a feeling. But I'm sure we'll see him in later episodes as well. But
yeah,
a lot more strengths and weaknesses, Drew. A lot more strengths and weaknesses. There's a run style that probably has always existed to a certain degree, but because of the training that these kids do and the athletic ability and what we referred to a lot last year as creative movement that that kids are exhibiting out there on the field, especially in the skill positions and the rush positions, is this ability to kind of start and stop, and stay in a straight line linear format. So he's able to do this in kind of break tempo of players, which is an angle destroyer that destroys angles of tacklers and completely keeps you going. Jahmyr Gibbs is outstanding at that. We see, we see some other backs that have exhibited. Isaiah Pacheco does a real nice job of it. And Jonathan Brooks seems like a young master of that running style. Very light on his feet, great accelerator. He can kind of hitch and just burst and go with great speed and outstanding straight line speed. He's a one cut and go square runner. He's not going to be a big dancer. He's not going to give us the Gale Sayers, Billy Sims style runs. He is going to square and go, which is what you want to see. That creates a lot of efficiency out of the running back position and out of your running game, is when you have a runner that is that style. He's a very valuable contributor, both as a receiver and blocker in the passing game. That's wonderful. And that's great for a guy, an offensive coordinator. Jonathan Brooks is not going to be in the game and you're not going to say, oh, they're going to pass, you don't know if it's going to be pass or run. And you don't know necessarily if he's in the block or if he's going to release underneath for a dump off, check off type route too. So he's going to add a lot of value to an offense that way. He has the foot speed for zone and the physicality and balance for gap running schemes and running philosophies. He's got great field recognition. He scans for seams in the zone scheme and the zone runs. He's really, really adept at finding those slivers and those gaps and alleys and those running schemes. He's, like I said, he's a very willing tackler on special teams, and that may be a role that he fits, at least at certain times in his career. He's got very low miles. That's very attractive. He does not have the banging on his body that some of these other prospects that we're going to be talking about are. He's a pounder as a runner and as a pounder as a runner, and he's also a very adept receiver as a running back. So this is a very, very dynamic prospect and a guy that could easily be a day one draft pick.
When I see Jonathan Brooks, I see a very similar skill set to Jamal Williams, but with a little more quicks, a little more get up, and that's a good comparison. You know, folks around here in Detroit certainly know Jamal Williams well from the 2022 season, breaking Barry Sanders' single season touchdown record. I think Jonathan Brooks could be a very, very productive and will be a very productive running back in the league. When you talk about late first round, you know, a team that comes to mind, and I not saying that they'll do it, but they certainly could look at it, would be the Baltimore Ravens. They had kind of a carousel back there in their backfield because of injuries. Not that they don't have Gus Edwards, a very good running back, etc., but a lot of injuries back there. That seems to be a position group they hadn't solidified. Kansas City, now they have Pacheco, and that's another name too. We watched him at Rutgers in the Big Ten here for a long time, and we always liked him. But if playing at Rutgers, he never got into a big bowl game. He had good statistics, but there was always this kind of asterisk next to him, almost like, well, he's at Rutgers, so he's probably not first round worthy, and he didn't get picked there. But his game translates to the NFL. I think Jonathan Brooks's game translates to the NFL very well as well, and obviously high profile from Texas. He had a lot of eyes on him, and he did not disappoint. But Coach, there's some things he needs to work on. What are you seeing?
Well, some of the various things that are strengths can also be set as weaknesses as well. And that is his playing sample size. He's just not played very much. And that's not such a concern about learning the game and those kinds of things. He's going to be with, some of the best coaches in the world in doing that. He'll be caught up that way. It's just, what do we have in Jonathan Brooks? Is he as advertised? Or was this something that was a little bit more systemic and a product of the University of Texas football program? That being Jonathan Brooks' success. So we don't know that. This is going to be a reoccurring thing that we're going to be talking about through this position group. Really up through even the dark horses, is that a lot of these guys have a tendency to take on hits. That can be, and there's going to be many analysts that say that's a strength. And yes, and generally in football, me as a football coach, at least at this level, at the levels that I coach in, absolutely taking up, not being contact shy, having good contact courage. That's a wonderful asset to have. That being said, as a running back in the NFL, we got to be careful with that, because if you take on a lot of hits, you're going to take on a lot of damage to your body, and you're also going to be susceptible to turning the ball over in fumbles, because these players are amazing tacklers from an accuracy standpoint, and they hit you exactly how they want you. They're able to control their bodies that way. So we got to be careful on taking on too many hits. He's not the greatest open field runner. Like I said, he doesn't want to make you miss. He's going to either beat you with his speed, or he's going to beat you with his tempo, or he's going to out physical you. That's how Jonathan Brooks is going to beat you as a running back, as a ball carrier. And his frame, he was 6 foot 207, good, wonderfully built athlete. But how is that going to hold up over time when we're taking on punishment and hits that Jonathan Brooks is probably going to engage in?
Yeah, he's I mean, and I don't think he's going to change his style per se, but yeah, absolutely. You want to have some awareness. I mean, if you need to step out of bounds at the sideline, just for clock management alone, let alone why take an additional hit when you don't need to, you're dead to right stop. Those are kind of instinctive things that you hope that players will pick up on, and you certainly hope Jonathan Brooks does as well. But at the same time, you admire his physicality and his willingness to take the hits, like you said. And I really like him a lot. I mean, we always talk about, would these guys fit in Detroit? Well, yeah, of course they would, but it's just not. It's not necessary. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are pretty damn good, and that's a pretty good 1-2 punch. So, but yeah, any team in the NFL would love a Jonathan Brooks on their team. If they don't already have a player like that, they're looking at him. So yeah, I think I like Allen better as a prospect, and I think he'll be the most impactful running back of the group. But it's hard to not get kind of enamored with Brooks's skill set and ability. And like you said, the lack of he's got more tread on the tires. And if he's able to show that he can maintain what he did last year, yeah, he becomes very, very attractive to a lot of teams. So looking forward to seeing him in the NFL for sure. Let's talk about the next prospect, Coach. We know him very well from Michigan, Blake Corum, and he came back last year to finish the job, and they certainly did finish the job and won the national title. But we've seen this guy's got a huge heart and he's got great ability. Let's talk about Blake Corum.
Absolutely. University of Michigan legend, Blake Corum. He came back, like you had said, was part of the unfinished business crew, the mission accomplished crew under Coach Jim Harbaugh. And Blake Corum, certainly didn't disappoint and was one of the main leaders of this University of Michigan football program the past 3 years that have been utterly dominant and some of the best that the program's ever had. 5'8", 213-pound senior from Marshall, Virginia. He's a two-time NCAA Division I FBS All-American here at Michigan. He's the Cole record holder for most TDs in a single game, most TDs in a single season, and career touchdowns. So if that tells you something, out of the 144 years that they played football at the University of Michigan, that this kid has had the most touchdowns in a game, a season, and a career, that shows you the kind of player that Blake Corum has been for the University of Michigan. 58 career rushing touchdowns, 61 total touchdowns, 28 touchdowns in that season that he broke that record, which is amazing. 3,737 career rushing yards, and that's probably held up. He probably would have had 4,000 had he not gotten injured in the 2022 season. He's the two-time Big Ten running back of the year. This is a highly, highly heralded prospect, maybe more heralded than any prospect in regards to what he was able to do at the college level in this draft in Blake Corum.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Michigan legend, and he always will be. And it's this season will never be forgotten around these parts for sure. So much to like about Blake Corum, and the fact that he came back for his senior season, coming off a very, very successful junior year, even though he did, to your point, did get hurt late in that season and wasn't able to really participate in the playoffs, so to speak, or in that Ohio State game. But last year, wow, just amazing. But let's talk about what Blake Corum brings to the table in terms of being an NFL running back coach.
Well, he's supremely trained and balanced that way. He's a true product of now Los Angeles Chargers strength and conditioning coach Ben Herbert's program. And he's another one of these weight room and testing dynamos that's going to really, really look good at the combine in those facets. Very slippery and savvy, yet physical runner. He kind of brings all three elements to the game, which really are befitting of the NFL style. It's those types of running backs that have the greatest long-term success in this modern NFL. He kind of finds and wills his way to the second level. He is getting himself his 3-4 yards. It's going to happen. And if you're getting, if you're a plus 3.5 yard per carry guy, which he's going to be flirting with, I really do think at the NFL level, you're going to be productive and you're going to be a guy that gets the football. That's just going to be the way it is. Very versatile across running schemes. He really did a lot of power stuff at Michigan, but also showed a great, aptitude for the zone schemes as well. He's got some patience and good vision that way. He's really scheme versatile. You can pick your poison with Blake Corum in that regard. He exhibits that great patience in doing so. He's a rare blend of that twitchy, explosive kind of Jonathan Brooks style back and the bruiser power type guy that can bang and get some extra yardage. Very David Montgomery-like. In a 5'8", 213-pound frame.
Yeah, I like that comparison a lot. That makes a lot of sense, Coach. And, people watching this are saying, okay, this guy's the most decorated running back in the class, no doubt. He's a Michigan guy, so these guys are going to be biased. But we have him at number 3, Coach, and there are some concerns here. What are we talking about?
Well, first and foremost, and just you can put it right out there, is this unlike Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum got a lot of miles put on him at the college level. He played a lot of football, carried the football a lot. Yeah. So he has taken on some hits. That is undoubtedly taken its toll. And now he's going to be playing football at even a more physical level. Just how long can Blake Corum continue to endure at 5'8", 213? He showed to lose some effectiveness in short yardage even towards the end of the year this year, where it wasn't just as automatic, as it was before, despite having, a phenomenal offensive line. So that is something that I'm sure that's going to get tested early in preseason as to whatever team Blake Corum lands on, what they have with him in that regard. Again, is he going to be, he's a stout but small statured player at 5'8", 213. Yes, we had a wonderful running back, and that was roughly that size here, that wore number 20. But just how long is he going to be able to endure? We talked, about he was a bell cow at Michigan. That's a badge of honor, but that also is going to be something of a concern at the NFL level. And he's much more comfortable as a runner and in the running game than he is in the passing game. And that could be something that, if Blake Corum's not out there, that kind of is a tendency, is that, or if he is in there, they're definitely going to keep him in pass pro. We need to see a little bit more out of Blake Corum. And there's plenty of clips of him catching footballs from J.J. McCarthy. But we need to see him develop into a receiver as well as a runner.
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't necessarily called upon to do that as much at Michigan, but certainly he's going to have to show that he's capable of doing that. I don't see to me, I'd be shocked if Blake Corum's not taken in the second round by some team. I don't see him being a day one guy because of these few concerns here. They're concerns that hurt his draft value. I don't believe they hurt his value as an NFL player, though. I mean, you know what you're going to get with Blake Corum. You hope you can get even more. If he can develop into a pass catcher like that. Wow, I mean that would be something else. I don't see him. He's definitely not going to be and shouldn't be a bell cow at the NFL level. But what a complimentary back! You bring up David Montgomery. That's a great comparison. He is a complimentary back with Jahmyr Gibbs and very, very successful in that role. Yeah, I see Blake Corum absolutely being that way. But again, Allen and Brooks more guys that could probably carry that load. But Corum probably better suited for a tandem backfield. But what a prospect! It's sad to see him leave Michigan, but we're certainly happy for him, right? And he's going to have a successful NFL career, no question. So good luck to Blake Corum. He's going to make a team real happy on day two for sure. Absolutely. Coach, we got another prospect here from Notre Dame, one of the rivals of the University of Michigan. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, the rival they don't play anymore because they see themselves as more aligned with the Atlantic coast than they are in the Midwest. But evidently they stopped teaching geography at the University of Notre Dame. But that's another debate for another time, right, Drew?
There you go.
But this is a player that really jumped up our board a little bit too after watching some film study. The more and more I saw Audric Estime, and yes, I mean, watch a fair share of Notre Dame football, but I guess we didn't really realize until we were really looking at his body of work, the type of player that he is. He is our number 4 overall prospect and jumped up, a slot from 5. 5'11", 227-pound junior. So he's a well-statured, well-built young guy, 4-star prospect out of the state of New York, but played football in New Jersey at one of the prep academies there, and was the 2020 New Jersey Player of the Year. So this is a high-caliber high school prospect. 2,307 career rushing yards at Notre Dame. Was the primary running back for 2 of those years. Kyron Williams was the guy that he replaced. So had 2,307 yards behind him, who was just a rookie this year himself in the NFL, as goes without saying. 29 career touchdowns. So this is a guy that was used at the goal line a lot and is a finisher. That's proof. That's proof in the pudding that Audric Estime is a finisher, which is going to bode well for his draft stock in the NFL. This past season, he had 1,341 yards and 18 touchdowns. So much like Jonathan Brooks, he's a product of a great year. Although he was very close to 1,000 yards as a sophomore as well. So Audric Estime, very, very intriguing prospect here.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Coach. And this running back class reminds me of the class, and I forget the year, but when Edwards-Helaire and Swift and those folks were drafted, and Edwards-Helaire ended up being the late first round pick of that group. and Swift obviously going to the Lions on day 2 very early. I see these top 4 guys like that. Estime could be that guy that slips, that works his way up, even over Jonathan Brooks, even if he can show out at the combine and at his pro day, because there's a lot to like about Estime. Let's talk about his strengths.
Well, we think that, outside of like guys like Brooks and Corum, he does have that stature. He's 5'11", 227. Not as big as Braylon Allen, but he's a bigger, thicker back. Very strong runner. Can run in both gap and zone run schemes as well, which is going to get these guys moved up the ladder and into the top tier of our board anyway. If you're scheme versatile, you are a worthy player to be taken. He's a great blocker. He's what you can really see. He's a real pro and pass pro. He is outstanding at it. So that's something that is, very, 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 very needed in the NFL level with the different blitz schemes and the speed of these rushers. You need a secondary blocker that's going to chip, paw, and pick and cut and pick up guys coming through. Audric Estime is very, very good at it. Very patient and skilled runner. He's not going to hurry himself to a hole and just have it closed up on him and be, swallowed up for a yard or two. He's got some vision and some advanced skill that way. He shows that excellent patience, but his physical ability allows him to fall forward in his runs and pick up additional yards. So again, this is another person that you would not mind having the football in his hands in short yardage situations. He's got a good mix of tempo, of agility to offset his power. He's not just a bull and a China shot looking to pound and running everybody over. He's got some start and stop to him. He's got a little bit of a one cut and wiggle game. He's got some shift to him, and he can make you miss. Audric Estime is a real running back prospect that's going to play NFL football somewhere.
He's a very safe pick in my view, because you're going to get positive yardage from him. He's not going to hurt you out there. Doesn't mean he's going to be on the top 10 highlight reels every week, but he's going to be very, very consistent and consistently good. I think the question is, can he be consistently good and at times great? Let's talk about some things that you see he needs to work on.
Well, very much like Braylon Allen, he's not a long speed, long ball threat. Okay, he's not a long speed ball threat. He's not going to hammer home 75, 80-yard runs every time he touches the football. He's not going to be a threat to do so. Again, you're going to see some clips at Notre Dame where he does that. At the NFL level, that's not probably what his style translates to the most, which, okay, he's more of a controlled running game player. He's committed to the little yards. He's not a big play. He wants to get the first down. He wants to advance the down markers the down marker as far down the field as he can. Which that's admirable. That's admirable. It's just not dynamic. It's just not very dynamic. He's a blocker over receiver in the pass game, and again, just like how Braylon Allen's more of a receiver over a blocker in the pass game. That kind of is going to give away a little bit of a tendency that if Audric Estime's in there, does it necessarily mean it's pass? No, because he could get the ball as a running back. But if he's in there at 3rd down and 15, likely throwing the football downfield. He does not deliver a lot of chunk plays. This is not going to be a big play guy. He's kind of a bread and butter running back. But I tell you what, those guys are worth their weight in gold. And I still feel, even despite having a few of those things to be said about him, Audric Estime is definitely a draft prospect. Definitely a draft prospect.
I think he's at the prototype, like you said, prototypical build. He's close to 6 foot, 5'11", 227. It's like I'm bringing out a fire hydrant, man. Good luck. Low center of gravity, runs hard. Like when you say like he's determined to get those 3 or 4 yards, it means he's probably going to get them. And, you do the math, folks. If you can average 4 yards a carry, that means you're getting a first down every 3 carries. That works. That translates. So, yeah, this is a real physical guy. Yeah, he kind of was a little under the radar for a lot of the season. And, but yeah, he's an outstanding prospect. I look forward to really watching him perform at the combine in his pro day too. I want to see what he can do, because I think he's going to open some eyes too there, Coach. So yeah, nice coverage of Estime. Let's talk about Trey Benson, the number 5 prospect. from Florida State, and they had a great season until unfortunately Travis got hurt and things kind of fell apart a bit, and they weren't able to get into the playoff, which was a source of controversy. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's only 4 teams could make it. Now, of course, it's going to be 12. We'll have our controversies there too, I'm sure, but perhaps not as amplified. But Trey Benson, hell of a running back. Let's talk about him.
He certainly is. And we swapped him out from our 4 to our 5th. We'll talk about that later as to why. But this is a real physical specimen. And a blend of size and speed, he may be atop the whole class in that regard. And there are many boards that have Trey Benson in their top 3 or even top 2 running backs as far as draft prospects. 6'1", 223-pound junior out of Florida State as of now. Was a 3-star prospect out of Greenville, Mississippi that originally played for the Oregon Ducks. He had 14 touchdowns in 2023, so he had a really nice year, productive year this past season, as Florida State was, had a phenomenal year themselves. They had it, it was kind of unfortunate that they didn't make the playoff themselves. If this was next year, they definitely would have been, and they would have played at home in that first round. So 24 career TDs at Florida State. So his 2 years spent with the Seminoles were highly productive. He was all ACC this past season and had 1,899 yards rushing these past 2 years. So this is a productive player. This is a very productive player that has great size and speed, as a combination.
Yeah, you can see from this picture, he's pretty rocked up, man. 6'1", 223. That's some nice size there. Let's talk about what
athlete.
Oh yeah, let's talk about what makes him so good.
Well, he does have big speed. He's big and he's fast. So we call that big speed. And there's something to be said about that. That's hard to stop. If you get in front of that, it's probably going to tangle up for 5, 6, 7 more yards. Yeah. So he's going to be a real positive yardage guy that way. It's great long speed. This is a home run hitter. Trey Benson is a guy that can rip you for 75, 80 yards. He's very fluid, very smooth accelerator. Kind of got that track and field speed. He's got that, just like you said, that rocked up, sinewy, just chiseled physique. He's very smooth, fluid athlete that way. Very dangerous in the open field. If he's got the ball in some space, he is a chunk play generator, which is a little bit more contrary to Audric Estime's style. Yet he is also very aggressive and squares his shoulders and will take on the physicality as well. And he has the build to do so, as you can see. He is that type of player that can endure contact in that regard. He demonstrates some power to his explosiveness. He's not just, a burn it to the outside and go type guy or a speed and space player. He is also very physical. He's also a very confident pass catcher. That's a part of his game that is going to definitely be enhanced at whatever place he lands. I know we have him 5th on our board. Trey Benson is another player that could very well be said to be one of the first backs taken as early, probably as sometime very early on in day 2.
Yeah, and Trey Benson, I love what he can do out there. But like you touched on a couple prospects ago, sometimes your greatest strengths can be a weakness too. And I think that applies to Mr. Benson as well. Let's talk about those.
Well, he does seek contact and invite hits, just like we've talked about with some of these other prospects. And we said it was going to be reoccurring. That's a strength to many. And it also can be a weakness because that's the type of player that fumbles. That's the type of player that gets concussed. That's the type of player that gets injured. So, and that's the type of player that doesn't play awfully long in this league if their body can't endure it. Probably the biggest concern, obviously, outside of his health, with those guys that take on a lot of those big hits, or invite taking on big hits, are guys that fumble the football as well. So that's something that you just to keep in mind. He often relies on power when he could evade and cut. So he's explosive. He's not elusive. So he's a guy that can just burn you down the field, but he would rather run kind of in traffic and bang than he would make somebody miss an angle away from them. even though he possesses the skill and capability to do so. He has sustained multiple moderate to somewhat concerning injuries into his legs and knees. And that, I think, is going to be the red flag that maybe tags him down a little further. And the primary reason we swapped him out with Audric Estime from 4 to 5 on our board is that I just feel that that's going to be taken into consideration. And when you watch Trey Benson run, he's kind of got that high-legged, high upright running style, which is going to not only lead to running, struggles in the short yardage situations, but it also is going to lend itself to those injuries and to those big hits. So, and he just looks like a guy that has kind of stiffened up into being an upright runner a little bit. That's not to say Trey Benson won't be a phenomenal prospect and a guy that could very well be a 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL, because he has the skill level to do so. There's just a few things about him that also say that he could be a one contract player.
Yeah, and that's I think where this class, I wouldn't say there's just question marks because you don't know these things. And talent wise, this is a very solid class, but there's question marks with everybody. There just isn't a Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs in this draft where you're like, yeah, this guy's going to be a stud. Even though there was, we had those guys going late in the first round last year and they went early. And I think a lot of that was because teams recognized that and they were like, well, we're gonna get the jump on Robinson or Gibbs, and then a couple other GMs rolled in there, and thankfully Brad Holmes said, yeah, we're gonna take Gibbs, one of those things. So I don't see that this year, but yeah, super talent, and yeah, Trey Benson. Yeah, you're right in the sense that with being a home run threat, inviting contact kind of is counterintuitive to that when you're able to make an extra cut. And again, I think a guy like that's so instinctive. You hope that instinct will translate when he realizes, hey, I've got to be more elusive and less physical in order to be more successful. He's got the ability to do so. And well put, Coach. Let's talk about our next prospect here on the board, and that is Bucky Irving out of Oregon. And Coach, I know you like him a lot. Let's talk about what he's done.
Chicago native, a guy from out of the city of Chicago, and it was originally a Golden Gopher, a row the boat Golden Gopher out of the University of Minnesota. 5'10", 195-pounder, as you said and stated, and as you can see here with the slide, is a product from the University of Oregon now. Had 700 yards and 4 touchdowns at Minnesota as a true freshman. So, I mean, that goes without saying. He was productive at the age of 18 going into 19. So, that says something about Bucky Irving right there, is he was really kind of called upon to be a ball carrier and a play threat at a very early age. So it speaks to his skill set quite a bit. 2,256 yards and 16 touchdowns in his 2 years in Eugene. Caught 85 passes the last 2 seasons at Oregon and has 1 career fumble. So Bucky Irving really brings a lot to the table that's to like. As you can see in his body type, he's not as thick as some of these other prospects as we've seen. He's a little bit of a slighter build, which tells us he's probably not that RB1 guy that we talk about, Christian McCaffrey, or we talk about in somebody like and I don't want to just keep always bringing up the obvious, but like Derrick Henry. He's more of a partner in crime and a committee member, but is somebody that can certainly assert himself that way in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on. This guy's going to be a heck of a back, but it's going to be in a backfield by committee. But what he brings to the table, he's the versatility of being able to catch the ball and being an effective runner and showing he could do that right from the hop. That's impressive numbers for a freshman. 700 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. That's impressive. So let's talk about what you really like about Bucky Irving, Coach.
Well, when he touches the football, he is a house call threat all the way. He can hit the home run. A lot of clips of him doing so at Oregon. He's got elite speed and explosiveness. He can just burst and blow people away. But yet, that being said, he's a scrapper. He'll fight for extra yards. He will not give himself up, and he'll lunge and pull and twist and to get himself freed or extended to fall forward. which for a person of his stature and size at 5'11", 195, that's impressive. That's impressive to see. He's a very decisive, deliberate player when he's going to show you where he's going to go. And what's impressive about that is he actually gets there almost all the time earlier than the defender does. So, that's the type of runner he is. He's very, very good in the zone concepts. Not a lot of gap power experience. So he's probably going to a zone scheme type running philosophy and franchise. But he's extremely productive pass catcher. With that frame, we're going to need to see him flex out and be able to do those things and run routes out of the backfield. So Bucky Irving's probably a zone guy, but he's a very, very, very good zone guy and somebody that may be higher on many other people's boards that run that style of running game.
Yeah, and I mean, you think of teams like Philly, you think of teams like Baltimore that run those kind of concepts. Maybe even Carolina to some extent, and Bucky Irving would fit in very nicely in a lot of situations like that, no question. And I think it's safe to say that our top five now, those names may interchange a bit, like we've talked about, but I think Bucky Irving's really solid here at number 6 because I think he's that next guy. And there's some reasons for that, Coach. Let's talk about those.
Well, he's got a very light frame. He's a smaller stature guy. This is not somebody that's going to probably carry the load for you. He's going to be an accent running back. He may struggle to escape the bigger, stronger tacklers in the NFL that might kind of swallow him up and plays that were chunk plays and big plays for him at Oregon or at Minnesota won't quite get there at this level. At least with the proficiency and effectiveness that they did at the college level for him. He's not a good pass blocker. But again, that's not probably how we're going to use Bucky Irving. He's not going to be used as a pass blocker. He's going to be used as a motion guy, as a player that's going to flex out as a slot. He's going to run routes out of the backfield, those kinds of things. So to say that's truly a weakness, it just is going to – Bucky's not going to break tendencies for you. That's that's going to happen with that. His stop and start, his stop and go game, his start and stop game, and his elusiveness needs work. For a kid his size, he's got to make more people miss. He has got to be more elusive because at that body build, you can't just bully people and run by them in the NFL level. It just doesn't work that way. So those are some things that Bucky Irving is going to be able to do to maximize his effectiveness through his and past his rookie contract.
Who does he compare favorably to you, Coach, in the NFL right now in terms of how his style?
Well, I mean, you look at some of the kind of slighter, backs that you see, the third down, type running threats. But really, like Devin Ashani, he's not completely different than a player like that. There's some similarities there. Certainly there's some similarities there. You could really kind of see him be that kind of an accent to a team. Is he, built a ton differently than like an Alvin Kamara in that? I mean, body style, it's similar. Kamara's bigger, but that's something that he's going to have to work on too. Get that 195 probably up, 10, 12, 13 pounds into the, 205 to 210 range. That's going to really, really help him. But, a Devin Ashani, that's the type of runner he is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Coach, but those are our top 6. And like we said, it's a pretty solid group. There's some outside potential for a day one, maybe for one of these guys. But I think talent wise, there's probably 3 of them that could be a day one pick. But to your point, with the run on quarterbacks, the run on offensive tackles, the run on receivers, we're going to likely see, and cornerbacks, and maybe even defensive end and defensive interior linemen, it's going to be very difficult for a running back in this class to crack that day one, just because of team need and those prime positions that are going to be in plentiful amount available. You got to strike while iron's hot, so to speak. So I think a lot of teams are going to see that they'll get the value they need on day 2. Bucky Irving, I definitely see as a definitely probably a third round guy. But I would be surprised if he slipped out of day 2. To be honest with you, I just think he's too good. But coach, we got some guys we want to talk about now. Kind of our dark horses, if you will, and I know there's a guy up here you like a lot. Let's talk about him.
Well, there's a few. One of them for me is the San Francisco, California native Ray Davis, who finished his college career with the University of Kentucky as a 5'8", 220-pound senior. He transferred from the Temple Owls and he transferred from the Vanderbilt Commodores. So, Ray is one of these guys that has taken advantage of the modern rules of the NCAA and had a rather intrepid college career and playing for 3 different schools in 5 years. But he was able to rush for over 1,000 yards at Temple and at Vanderbilt, and has 29 career touchdowns between the 3 schools. He had 28 receptions and 318 yards receiving at Kentucky this past year, so he showed some adept, some ability out of the backfield as a receiver. He's got some. He's a very strong runner, and at 5'8", 220, you would expect him to be that way. He's a yards after carry machine. He's gonna twist and turn for extra yards and get himself to the second level, not dissimilar to a Blake Corum. He's a very good pass catcher and route runner, and he has a nose for the end zone. So he's shown over the part of his career that he's good in short yardage, which is going to be an asset for him. He does have the capability to be a long carry ball carrier, ball threat for a team. He could be a bell cow. He has some of that 20, 25 carry a game type, background. So these are some things that really Ray Davis brings to the table that could have him be one of these surprise stars of the NFL. There are some things also that he's got to definitely work on, and which are probably going to peg him down the board a little bit. And that's his, lack of long speed at 5'8", 220, and you don't have the ability to break one. There's gonna be some guys that get the look over you. He's a poor pass protector, but he's a good route runner. So he's going. Again, we've talked about this as a weakness that yet could be yields to a strength, which is his pass catching ability. That is a strength of his. And he invites the contact. He's another one of these backs that's going to take on hits. He's carried the football an awful lot, through his career. And, is he going to be somebody that could be susceptible for fumbles and the injuries? Well, when you take on hits, you run those risks a little higher than you do when you're able to evade. So those are some things with Ray Davis. But Ray Davis is a heck of a prospect, Drew.
Yeah, he is. And Coach, I've got kin from that area, and I have kin that are alumni of UK. So I do watch with a little more attentive eye, because I do keep them on my radar. And I like Ray Davis a lot. And I'm saying this as a guy, if you look at my resume in my field, I've made a few stops, but as any prospective employer, I'm going to ask why. So when I see kids coming out of college that have transferred 2 or 3 times, I'm okay with it, but I want to know why. And I'm looking for specific things. Now, I know, hey, business is business. I respect that. And, this is less about Ray Davis, more about just the prospects in general. But, if you get the sense that guys transfer just because, well, if this situation wasn't right for me, that situation wasn't right for me, that's where I start wondering, maybe you're the issue. But if I hear things like, I had an opportunity to start here and this coach I have a background with and they had recruited me. Okay, now there's a little more to it. This isn't just about trying to find the quickest way from point A to point B. This is about really, really having a commitment to some individual coaches or schemes. I want to see that as a GM. I don't want to hear, I just didn't like the situation, or I didn't like my lack of playing time. Maybe you didn't work hard enough. That's going to be my first thought. And I don't think that's the case with Ray Davis at all. I think he's a very good football player. I see Blake Corum like qualities there because physically he's very similar. But again, you got Blake Corum, who is a senior who stayed at Michigan his whole time, and then you got Ray Davis, who's bounced around a little bit. but is pretty damn good running back. So you want to know about these things and why that is. But I think Ray Davis, I love this pick here, Coach. I think he's somebody that could definitely make some noise and probably a day 3 guy, early day 3 guy. But look out! I mean, he could really, in the right situation, really stand out in this class this year. No question about that. And I know this is a guy I brought up, right? Coach Will Shipley out of Clemson. And I like him a lot. He's from North Carolina. So he didn't travel too far from home to go to school, but a 5-star recruit, had over 2,700 career rushing yards at Clemson, which is very impressive, 31 career TDs. And what I like too is 84 receptions for 584 career yards at Clemson. Means he catches about 20, caught about 20 catches per 25 catches per year. He's a junior. He's 5'11", 210, so he's got pretty good size. Not huge, but he's got decent size. What I like about him a lot, he's got great start and stop running ability. And you talked about that a lot with some of these prospects. That's very, very helpful, very, very enticing to NFL GMs, and will help make you a successful back. Got to have it. Really an exceptional running back as a receiver. He's great out of the backfield catching passes, as it was just illustrated. And he's quick. He's got great straight line speed, but he's quick. He can get from 0 to 60 real quick, so to speak, in car terms, but he can definitely turn it on quick. He's great in the kick return game. So being a special teams guy, we talked about Jonathan Brooks earlier being really good in special teams. This is a kid that can do it too, and very productive in space, elusive. Got to have it, and he makes the most out of it. Gets that yak going. That's what's great. What you got to look for in Will Shipley, despite having really solid speed, he's not really overwhelmingly athletic. So he's not super slippery, but certainly very good in open space, but just not super slippery, and not a power or high traffic runner. So he's not going to be that in between the tackles type guy per se, but certainly has the speed to get outside. So, and another reason I like him a lot too, does run upright and have a high pad level. So to be that kind of player, he better be able to hit that corner and make that corner quickly. I like him a lot, Coach, and I just he's been with a big program, and certainly the last couple of years after Trevor Lawrence left, they haven't been able to replace that quarterback position. So Clemson kind of took a hit, but I think Will Shipley is going to be a real solid 4th or 5th round guy that might really make a team happy in the right situation. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. He's got brilliant speed, and that's what got him the big 5-star recruiting ranking out of high school up there in North Carolina. Up there as far as Clemson's concerned, North Carolina, down from us. But I think that kick return game is going to be a real asset for him. I think he's going to show right away he can be somebody's kick returner, which is going to yield him a roster spot. And he's dangerous in space. I mean, you can get him some space. He can separate and do some things. He's just not going to be your every down person, at least at this point in time in his career. And that's just, he does not garner a lot of hits, does not want to take on. He wants to evade, which as a plus in regards to not getting hurt or being a fumble threat. But it also lends to you not being maybe the most effective either. So, I think this is a person, you said it very, very, very well. Going to get an opportunity. He's going to be somewhere, and it's going to definitely impact the special teams for the very least.
Yeah, that's where his immediate impact comes in. So he's definitely got value. He's somebody that's going to contribute right away, which I think that's what makes him probably an earlier day 3 guy. Maybe late day 2. I don't think so though. I think day 3 is probably the better spot for him, and round 4 makes a lot of sense in my mind. Coach, here's another guy from USC. Let's talk about him.
Well, Marshawn Lloyd is a player that's another transfer product that has been exceptional at the 2 USCs. He went. If it's USC, Marshawn Lloyd's played there. This time out of the University of Southern California, 5'9", 217-pound junior. Out of Wilmington, Delaware. Like we said, he was originally a Gamecock out of the University of South Carolina, but he had 1,600 over 1,600 career rushing yards and 19 career touchdowns. Played in every game as a true freshman for South Carolina, which goes without saying. Very, very intuitive player. He's great in pass protection, so he does really well in that facet of the game. He's kind of an all-around back, which is going to give him his opportunity in the league. That is going to give him his opportunity in the league. He can run, block, and catch, which he has shown aptitude in all of those categories. That's going to get him his opportunity. He's probably going to stick because of that. He's got very strong legs. He's a weight room warrior. You can tell he just kind of has that look to him, kind of that pit cobra build with really thick, strong legs. He's got a lot of wiggle. He can make you evade. He's got an outstanding agility. He can make you miss. So Marshawn Lloyd, is that type of prospect. Is he, a little bit, does he dance a little too much? Well, maybe that is too much of a strength at times that he depends on, because he can maybe be a little wiggle happy and not quite get to the line of scrimmage, which is not going to bode well for him and his long-term productivity if that becomes the case. He's not a big yak threat. He goes down, for being 5'9", 217, he's very tackleable player. He has suffered from some fumbleitis, which is going to probably be a little bit of a red flag. Him being a bit of a dancer, having some fumbles, in the way he cuts and how he cuts. We're going to talk about Kamani Vidal here down the road, who's outstanding at it. Marshawn Lloyd tries to, administer the technique himself and has come to be a little bit of an individual that's could be somewhat of a penalty target with how he pass protects. It's just got to be refined a little bit, because really it's overall a strength. Marshawn Lloyd is got a lot of intriguing qualities. Will some of his negatives be something that affects him on the draft board? There's a good chance of that, but another very high value player.
Yeah, I think if we're talking strictly about skill, I'd probably put him above Shipley. But the fumbleitis and perhaps, like you say, going down pretty quick at times. Yeah, that can be an issue. But at the same time, skill pays the bills. And when you show out on tape and when you show out at the combine and your pro day, sometimes those, let's face it, you get enamored by that skill set, and he's got a lot to like. So it's going to be a question. Can he at least cut down on some of these issues that you pointed out and be able to translate that to the NFL game? Yeah, dancing behind the line and fumbleitis are not going to work real well, but his speed and his elusiveness, man, that's and he's and being as intelligent of a player as he is, you can overcome a lot being able to do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing him on an NFL team, no question. Dylan Lobby from New Hampshire. You want me to cover this one, Coach?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Dylan Lobby, and Coach mentioned it. We saw him around these parts up in Mount Pleasant. Didn't break my heart being a Western Michigan Bronco, right, Coach? He ran roughshod over the Chippewas, and we got a good view of what kind of a back he can be. Again, out of the University of New Hampshire, 5'9", 210-pound senior. So, Central Michigan's probably one of the bigger schools they played. And that's immediately going to come to mind here. But he's from West Hampton, New York. So he didn't leave the great Northeast of the United States. He stayed closer to home. Had 155 career receptions at New Hampshire, so he's good at catching the football out of the backfield. 1,600 career receiving yards, 4,300 plus career all-purpose yards, and 68 catches for 708 yards receiving in 2023. That's a huge workload there. That can translate at any level when you're able to catch the football like that. That is amazing. So we really like that about him. What's good about Dylan Lobby? Very good burst, and he's sneaky fast. So he's not huge, but very, very quick, very fast. He keeps low pad level and finishes runs. That's very important, and really has enough wiggle to evade the big hits. And again, we talked about that. A lot of the prospects on this board, not many of them are that elusive, and Dylan Lobby has showed that he can be that kind of player. Very competitive, hard-nosed guy, and definitely can be a home run hitter at kick return. So again, here's another guy that special teams come into play here. And when we're talking about prospects at this, now at this range in day 3, you better be able to bring it on special teams, because you're probably not going to be a starter in the backfield right off the hop, and you may not even be fully in the rotation depending on who gets you, but you got to be able to contribute somewhere, and he can do that on special teams. What does he need to work on? Can be a little bounce happy. So maybe not as decisive at the line of scrimmage point of attack, and maybe tries to be a little, maybe too patient, trying to look for the perfect situation. And that often will close holes up and leave you with a loss of 1 or 2 on a play. So got to work on that. Despite his production, has had difficulty getting to space as a receiver. So again, that's something he needs to work on. Maybe some route running, maybe in the right situation, though, he'll be able to deal with that a little better, I'm sure. And knowing from what we saw with Dylan Lobby, he's very much relied upon in the New Hampshire offense. Probably in the NFL, not going to be that number 1 or number 2 guy out there. So I think those opportunities will come. So I think that's something he'll be able to overtake. But again, being impatient as a runner at times ties into that being bounce happy. And Coach, I wanted to ask you about this, because and obviously that's instinctive, but is that something you can coach a guy as a running back, and you say, look, I need you to just hit the hole? That how easy is that to coach?
Yeah, it's definitely a coachable point. And there's a lot of drill work, a lot of film work. You can combine it's very much kind of like changing your swing in baseball or golf. Is you're kind of correcting someone's natural tendencies to be more efficient and effective. And that's something that certainly, Dylan Lobby, and he'll probably be more effective in a more of a gap power scheme in regards to that. In his zone schemes, he's proven to be a guy that wants to bounce. And if it's there, that's great. But if it's not there, and if he would have stayed square, he could have gotten 5-6 yards where then otherwise that's the difference between 10 yards, 5 or 6 positive yards, or 3 or 4 negative yards. So those are some things that, Dylan Lobby's just going to have to face right away. He didn't play in the largest sample size of all time. I mean, we can say all we want about him torching Central Michigan. He didn't torch the University of Michigan. He didn't torch Georgia. He didn't torch Alabama. So, this being said, he's out of the state of New Hampshire. You look at his numbers. His numbers are somewhat reminiscent of Blake Corum's in many ways. He's been a long-term ball carrier and offensive threat for the University of New Hampshire. And that's something that, he's got a few miles on him. Even though maybe, he played at a certain level, that's not to say that he wasn't hit hard and endured some banging in his career. So, there are some things about Dylan Lobby that obviously, go without saying, but he's getting an opportunity. There's no 2 doubts about that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Let's talk about the next prospect, Coach.
Well, yes, Frank Gore. That's a name that probably comes up and is somewhat familiar to you. It should be, because his dad's one of the all-time leading rushers in NFL history. This is a Miami native and the son of Frank Gore Sr., who's 16-year NFL veteran. 3-star prospect, has played his entire career for the University of Southern Mississippi. 5'7", 199, 3,278 career yards rushing in 3 seasons. So that's over 1,000 yards per season, 24 career touchdowns. He has 66 receptions for 598 yards as a career in the receiving game. So a very dynamic running back threat for the Golden Eagles of Southern Miss. He's a true dual threat as a pass rusher and a receiver, and that's going to bode well for him. Great balance in traffic. He really can kind of handle himself in between the tackles for a player of his size. Outstanding trait. So it's really the antithesis. He's the anti-Dylan Lobby in that regard. He's very, very adept at trying to stay through the tackles. He's outstanding in the passing game as a receiver, and he's also a great blocker. So there's no tendency given here, and that's going to be huge for Frank Gore Jr. That's a real trait that he can carry with himself into the draft process. True multi-purpose running back, a lot to like. I would love to have him here just because of, I know there's a little bit of star quality there with the last name and that kind of thing. But in many ways, he's befitting of the type of runner and type of player we ask for as a Detroit Lions running back. Will he get there? Well, I'm not so sure. Size is a clear and present concern. He's 5'7", 199 pounds, that kind of build. We've seen players like Darren Sproles play for 13, 14 years, but by and large, the small player has a small playing career just because of how brutal, physical, and athletically dominant this game has become. But he's also another one of these players that likes the contact. He likes to invite it on. At 5'7", 199, you don't want to be taking too many big blows to the chin. And also, at that body size, getting lined up and derailed, you're going to be a fumble concern too. And he has some fumbles to his credit at the college level. So there's some things that Frank Gore has definitely got to correct upon. And there's definitely some prospects that probably jump off the board a little bit ahead of Frank Gore Jr. But this is a great diamond in the rough prospect. And on day 3, you watch out. This is going to be a player that gets some production out of his day 3 draft slot.
Yeah, very, very productive college player. Unlike Dad, he probably could use to gain about 30 pounds of muscle on that frame in order to be kind of that every down type back, which is not realistic. So yeah, he's definitely going to find a niche in the NFL. He's just going to have to, much like we talked about with Lobby and Shipley, they have to find that niche. Certainly special teams comes to mind immediately. Got to be productive there, and then show that you can be part of a rotation. A lot of these teams with backfields by committee, Frank Gore Jr. could definitely fit in nicely, and no question. You gonna take Kamani Vidal, Coach?
Sure, we can go ahead and do that. And this is going to be the last player that we identify here. I know it's been a long, long haul here, but we wanted to give you a lot of exclusive content in regards to our running backs. Drew, you pointed this guy out of Troy, 5'7", 215-pound junior. Marietta, Georgia prospect, 3-star guy. And he was very productive in a good football program at Troy University. 3,487 yards in his 3 years there, 29 career touchdowns, had 1,661 and 14 TDs this past season. So he had a big, big year this past year for Troy. He had also 65 career receptions, 468 yards. So another high volume offensive threat at the college level. Low center of gravity, obviously 5'7", 215 kind of speaks to that, but he has great balance, which is going to help him kind of at least transition into the or transcend into the second level and get himself those 3-4 yards that we're always looking for. He's a natural, very productive receiver in screen schemes as a running back. So this is a guy that really has a lot of experience and has a lot of play feel for the screen game, which, as we know here in Detroit, is a huge, huge piece to a lot of offenses. He's a downhill runner. Like I said, he gets to that second level with ease, very explosive and twitchy, very strong, effective in the passing game as a blocker as much as he is a receiver. This kid might be the best pass blocker in the draft next to Audric Estime. Estime is just a little bit bigger, but this kid can cut block and do so legally like nobody better in this draft. He was a bell cow this past year. He was a guy that carried the load for Troy. What are some things that, Kamani Vidal kind of presents as concerns? Small frame, 5'7", 215. He's thick and stocky, but he's got a smaller frame. And that's not typically bodes to a lot of longevity in the NFL. He may have reached his ceiling as to who he is. So is what he is good enough to be an NFL football player? We will see. He may be susceptible to being taken down, by bigger tacklers just because of that frame. Yes, he runs hard and he's physical and he's very downhill, but he's not maybe a player that's going to have a lot of big, big chunk plays just because of his style and how he runs the football. But there are a lot of things Kamani Vidal brings to the table, and he is definitely going to get an opportunity to do so. I know we've said that quite a bit here in this episode, but high quality prospect.
Yeah, I like him a lot, Coach. And yeah, I think he's got a shot of being a contributor on a team in the backfield. He kind of he physically does remind me of a Craig Reynolds type running back. Just how he looks. And I think he's someone that'll benefit by having really strong workouts too. I think that'll kind of put some more tangible the physical ability to the tape, and that always enamors a lot of the scouts and certainly fans, and it's an important part of it. And I think he's someone that could certainly benefit from that, having come from a smaller school at Troy. Coach, great job covering the running backs. Final thoughts before we close this one out.
Hey, there's a lot of football players that we talked about here that are of high caliber and high quality, and it's where exactly they fall. Again, there's this enigma and kind of the running back position that we're not quite sure exactly where things are trending. Are things falling more toward this way? Well, then you're going to see a lot of people off of our top 20 be mentioned in this draft. Some of these guys, if it's kind of seen as a premium, well, some of these players that we mentioned may go later in this draft than we think. But again, probably in the future years, there'll be a little bit more higher end talent and guys that can be seen as running back number one. But definitely a lot of accents and a lot of contributors and players that can be big role players for their franchises. And there's the outside chance that a couple of these guys are bell cow RB1 type players.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Like I said, it's an interesting group, and it's going to be really fun, especially day 2, to see where everything shakes out. And we look forward to that for sure. So for Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. And don't forget, we'll be doing our first round mock right before the NFL draft begins here in Detroit on April 25th, a Thursday. We'll have that mock draft published the weekend before that for the first round. So make sure you subscribe, like the video so you get notification when it's coming out. We have a lot of fun doing that, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as well. So take care, everyone, and thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.